Hello everybody, thanks for joining us.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to Bears on Film.
Topher here, Billy's with me.
Yes, that's right, I am.
We're doing this episode instead of... Our original plan was to do Phantom Thread this week, so you were going to get dragged to a period piece, which was going to be fun.
Yeah.
Until I said, actually I'm going away for the week to have fun with other people.
Other friends.
Yeah.
Hurtful.
I didn't want to tell you. Don't ask questions that you don't want answered, Billy.
That's right, so we're not getting to Phantom Thread this week.
I'll get to it at some point, because
Yeah.
it's Paul Thomas Anderson.
Oh, I mean, plus, I've told myself that I'm going to see every Oscar nominee this year. So I will get to it before March. But in the meantime, what are we talking about this week?
So another one of our throwback episodes for a film that one of us loves and the other one hasn't seen. We are doing 1992's A Few Good Men, written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Rob Reiner.
That's right, and in case you... I'm sure that you heard a couple of episodes ago, I'm the one who hasn't seen it. So I don't think that this is that bad of a film crime. Certainly this isn't on the same level as Casablanca and Die Hard.
Certainly not.
But, you know, it is one of those films, it's referenced quite often. Everybody knows you can't handle the truth, you know, and it was great to actually see that moment.
Apparently it's in the top 10 most played movies on cable television in the States.
Really?
Apparently.
It's very American, so I could see that. You know, probably good 4th of July movie or something.
Yeah, nothing says holiday like Trial.
I don't know, I'm not very culturally aware.
So, courtroom drama is how you would classify
Definitely.
A Few Good Men.
Definitely. Tell us the plot, Toph.
It's it's inspired by true events. Aaron Sorkin's sister
I read that, yeah.
is or was a lawyer, and a code red. There was an actual code red. Didn't even change the name of what that is, this disciplinary action which leads to the death of a Marine and the trial that we then follow.
Yeah, so his sister was a lawyer who was actually, she was a naval lawyer for 3 years who was stationed on Guantanamo when something like this actually happened. From what I've read, he didn't really change that much at all. You know, there have even been, I think I read that there were up to 4 different lawyers who came forward claiming that Tom Cruise's character was based on them.
That they're Daniel Caffey.
Yeah, one of them even
I'd claim that Tom Cruise is playing me as well.
Yeah, well, one of them actually even used it on his website and reckons he got a lot of business out of it.
www.realdanielcaffey.
And, you know, and Jack Nicholson has spoken as well about meeting, you know, at least one of the men that Jessup was based on. Part of his performance was based on one of them as well. So
yeah, right.
Which I think goes back to what we were saying last week in Molly's game about Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah,
I think he definitely prefers to work from truth.
A Few Good Men started life as a play, written by Aaron Sorkin, and then the option for the screenplay got picked up before the play had even started. He got paid a tidy sum of money to do
this
the
seems
screenplay.
unheard of to me. I read that it was well into 6 figures, which for a writer who has never written for screen before and only, from what I could tell, only really had one Broadway show before this, my mind was blown by this. Do you know the story of how that got picked up? Do you know who heard about his play?
No, I don't know. Just going back to, we were talking about Jessup just earlier, who Jack Nicholson plays. He was played on stage by, what's the guy? He was the bad guy in Avatar, and he was the blind guy in some horror film that I didn't see because it's a horror film. Stephen Lang.
Right.
Stephen Lang played Jessup on stage, which I can see working so well.
I also read that Josh Molina, who we all know Sorkin is obsessed with, maybe there's a little bear thing going on there, he was one of the defendants.
Yeah, right. I can see that working.
I think he was the slow-minded one.
I was going to say, there's no way he was Dawson. No. He was definitely Downey.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. That seems to be in Josh Molina's wheelhouse, just quietly.
He probably just wandered onto the stage.
Yeah. I listen to West Wing Weekly every week. I love Josh Molina on that podcast, and even he's pretty open about the fact that, thank God, I'm mates with Aaron Sorkin. Going into the rest of the cast, which I really, really like.
Oh, look, the cast is tremendous
cast
in this
film.
movie. I mean, the thing about this movie is it reminds you of how good Tom Cruise at one stage was.
I
He's
completely agree with you.
fantastic in this movie.
Like,
Jack Nicholson is
Latter
outstanding.
day Tom Cruise, which, Tom Cruise running away from things.
Yeah.
I could, I don't care. About.
Yeah, I don't know where this whole thing of him being an action movie star came from, because if you look back at his earlier work, like this or Jerry Maguire, that to me is where Tom Cruise really
So I wrote
shone.
down here a list of directors who have worked with Cruise over the journey.
Okay.
We've got Martin Scorsese, Stanley Kubrick, Steven Spielberg, Rob Reiner, Ridley Scott, Oliver Stone, Sidney Pollack, Cameron Crowe, Paul Thomas Anderson, Michael Mann, and Francis Ford Coppola.
Jeez, that's a tidy list.
No one who's crap at their job
gets to work.
gets
with
to
those
work. Like,
people.
some of them, okay, the studio might have said, you need someone good looking in this movie.
Yeah.
But no one gets to work with all of those people if they don't have some game.
Yeah.
And I think it sucks that we don't actually see that from Tom Cruise anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, did you get to American Made this year?
No, I wasn't interested.
It was actually not bad. As far as Cruise went, I felt it was a return. I mean, he's way too old. He's playing like a, early 30s, late 20s,
Like his character in The Mummy described as a young man.
It was pretty ridiculous. But as far as his presence on screen, he's great. Yeah, watching this, it was good to actually be reminded of that.
Yeah, there is an interesting little kind of thing with this comes a few years after Top Gun, of course.
Yeah.
And in both films, he has a dead father who kind of casts a bit of a shadow over his career.
Okay,
and
I'm
life.
gonna have to stop you there and tell you to give me a spoiler alert, because next shameful secret.
No way.
I've never seen Top Gun.
No way! Yeah. Okay, we're doing Top Gun. Good grief. All right, so this won't spoil anything, really.
Okay,
but
yeah.
in Top Gun, his character, in trying to live up to that, goes for too much sometimes. Whereas in this, Daniel Kaffee is kind of afraid to go to too much because the chances of living up to his dad are slim to none.
And we do go back to those daddy issues that Sorkin loves.
Sorkin loves daddy issues. We can only assume that Sorkin himself just loves listening to My Chemical Romance. But the rest of the cast, so you mentioned Jack Nicholson earlier. I mean, this is...
tremendous.
It might be my favourite Nicholson.
I was actually going to say that this is my favourite Nicholson performance.
Peak Nicholson.
Yeah, he is outstanding in this film. And I was reading, too, that he actually... that during that courtroom scene where he gives that big, speech, you can't handle the truth... He gave that performance every single take. Apparently, he did it about 50 times in a row, even when they were focused on Cruise or something.
Yeah.
And someone said something to him like, don't you want to hold this for when we're actually on you? Like, don't you want to keep that energy? And he was like, I just really like acting.
Yeah, it's like, this is my job. This is what I'm here to do.
Like, that's
Spoiler alert,
awesome.
I'm kind of good at it.
Oh, he's very, very good at it.
And it's funny because, Jessup casts such a figure over this film. He's only in 4 scenes.
Yeah, he was only filming for 5 days for this movie. Yeah.
Now, one of those scenes, the courtroom scene with him is, I think, about 15 minutes long. It's a serious chunk of film. But for up until that point, which is about an hour 45 in, his screen time is actually really low.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really like about Jessup is that while he's an absolute flog, he's not evil.
Well, as many of the great villains, he truly believes he is doing the right thing.
Yeah, there's that line that villains are the hero of their own story.
Oh, yeah, and that's absolutely true. His whole thing is that, you might not like the way I do things, but you need me, because without me, our country falls apart. He truly believes that he has a greater purpose, and he doesn't think he's done anything wrong in this case.
Yeah. There's also no getting around the fact that Jessup is a flog. I was going to mention this a bit later on, but since we're there, this is something I only noticed for the first time watching it yesterday for this episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot of... the framing on Jessup during that
interaction,
that back and
in
forth
Cuba.
with Tom Cruise in Cuba. The framing stays on this close shot of Jessup. But it's when he flicks the switch to that "you've got to ask me nicely" that the camera has shifted. And while we're on the same framing on Jessup, the background's changed. And it's not even that noticeable, but it's this cool little visual thing that Rob Reiner's done just to, as he's flicked the switch from a kind of unpleasant person to being kind of genuinely villainous, there's just this cool little visual change up as well, just to inform, even if you're not aware of it, just in the back of your mind somewhere, you're like, oh, there's been a shift here.
Oh, I mean, Rob Reiner is a tremendous director. You look at his history. I mean, even before this, he'd done Spinal Tap, Princess Bride, He's a master. And this film well and truly shows the difference between, when you look at this compared to last week Molly's Game, which is kind of why you suggest we do this week, so that we can kind of compare.
Yeah.
This shows you in the hands of a competent director
because it's
how
not
different
flashy.
it could be.
It's not a flashy film.
No, but it's just
It's just got
well
such
done.
good command of the script. So our other lead, while we're going through them, Demi Moore, who had to audition for the role. She wanted it, and they were like...
Yeah, I saw that there were some other pretty big names up for that role as well. Look, I would like to talk about Demi Moore for a sec if we can.
Do it.
The dialogue's great. The dialogue's wonderful, which is what Sorkin does well. The writing, I think, is not. My biggest issue is her character, because I think that Sorkin truly believes he is a feminist, and I think in some ways that's the most sexist thing about him, because he writes this character in such a way that you're introduced to her almost as this kind of badass. You're introduced to this character in that kind of way,
I don't get that at all from Galloway, because she's immediately unsure of herself as she's going to that meeting. She's doing this spiel over and over again, and she's terrible at it.
Yes, but this is my problem with that character, is that, the film only takes place over 3 weeks, I think, and it's less than a week in that she's like, you're the best. But it's not just about him being great, it's about her being not great. And I personally didn't like that. I just didn't like that whole kind of melting into a puddle over Tom Cruise thing. I read that someone actually asked Sorkin at the time, if her and Tom Cruise don't sleep together, why is she a woman? And he responded with, well, women have other purposes than to sleep with Tom Cruise. And that's a nice sentiment. But the problem is that doesn't come across in the writing of this film. Because what is her purpose as a woman other than to be there and think Tom Cruise is amazing?
Elsewhere in the cast, Kiefer Sutherland is so good.
He's great. I mean, you could talk about the cast of this movie forever, because the cast is huge for a start. It's lots of big names, and they're all excellent.
Yeah, like guys that, J.T. Walsh as Markinson, who's just a fantastic actor and is fantastic in this. Christopher Guest in this film, I love. Of course, he's coming off Spinal Tap and Princess Bride, two of my absolute favourite films of the 80s.
Yeah.
He's only in one scene, but he's fantastic. Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon's
great. And this is something that Sorkin does a lot in having characters. He doesn't tend to do black and white characters.
No, yeah.
And Bacon, he's opposing Tom Cruise in the courtroom.
Yeah.
But
I love the relationship between those two.
They've got a great dynamic.
Yeah.
And Kevin Bacon is so, spoiler alert, he's so happy to lose the case. One of the things that this comes up quite a lot in The West Wing, certainly, where Sorkin will throw things in there to give some level of backstory to things, but doesn't tell you about it. One of the things that is in this film is in one of the early scenes, the first scene we have with Jessup. His second-in-command, Markinson, and Kiefer Sutherland's character both start to talk at the same time. And Markinson says to Kendrick, after Kendrick has said, I'll handle this situation with the Marine, Markinson says, oh, like you handled, and he's about to go into something else when Jessup cuts them off and starts talking again.
Yeah.
And it's a great little thing because it gives us this idea of the relationship between all three of these people in the space of about 4 seconds without actually having to tell us much at all.
Yeah.
It's a great little bit of really efficient writing.
Yeah, I would actually love to see some of Sorkin's earlier work, because with this film, part of the deal when this film was sold to Castle Rock, which is Rob Reiner's production company, Sorkin was effectively almost a trainee. He actually worked there with the studio, training under William Goldman, which is why, I'm sure you knew this, William Goldman actually did a rewrite of this script. And Sorkin, even though it's funny, everything I've heard about Sorkin, working on West Wing and stuff, is that he's very much a solo writer. And he'll have a team, but he does the writing, and he's pretty particular about it not being changed. But he liked Goldman's changes so much that he even incorporated them into the play. And him and Goldman then worked together quite a bit. I believe it was Goldman who did the first draft of All the President's Men, and then...
The American President?
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. So they... Yeah, so I'd be curious to know how much he learnt from William Goldman and what his writing was like before this. Because Goldman, he wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Princess Bride, some amazing stuff. So I think to learn under someone like that must be amazing. And I'm sure that Sorkin was good to begin with, otherwise they wouldn't have taken him on. But I'd love to know what it was like before.
Yeah, because in this film we do have the birth of the Sorkin walk and talk.
Yes.
where there were apparently scenes that, as you do in a play, they're just in this space.
Yeah.
And, Rob Reiner's kind of pushing him, saying, look, they don't have to just be sitting here. We can, for instance, they could be on their way to somewhere.
Yeah.
And so Tom Cruise and Kevin Bacon have a walk and talk.
Which did become a very Sorkin thing.
Yep. Speaking of the way it's shot, the cinematographer is the great Robert Richardson.
Well, and as you said, the cinematography in this film, similar to what you were saying about the Rob Reiner's direction, is very quiet. There's nothing kind of flashy about it, but it's so effective.
Yeah.
It just,
There's some real telltale things in there that once I knew it was Rob Richardson and watched it again with that information, and there's a couple of little, for the lighting nerds out there, the strong backlight bounced back as the key, kind of the really Rob Richardson type things. He also, he was really strong on them using anamorphic lenses because he wanted to be able to do these big focus shifts in the courtroom.
Right. Because the opening scene of this film, as soon as it started, with that opening scene of them sneaking into Santiago's room, bandaging him up and stuff, as soon as it started, I was like, this is the difference between a well-directed film and Molly's Game.
Yeah.
Because, the cinematography in that scene was really simple, and yet the lighting was so effective, the direction was so effective, that I was instantly engaged. I was in. It was awesome.
This film also has my favourite training montage in a film ever.
The opening scene?
No, not the opening scene. Like, stuff Rocky. The montage where they're going through, when they're building the case in Caffey's apartment, and we're just looking in from the outside. I just love the shit out of that.
So the only thing, as we said, this movie is now 25 years old. The only thing that dated this movie for me at all was the score, the soundtrack.
Oh, really? I was watching it again this time going, man, I love the score in this movie.
See, Mark Shaman, who did the soundtrack, is a master, and he's scored a lot of films. But I think it's a lot of the use of synthesizer, and it's very electronic. It sounds like the 90s.
That's fair. That's
it just took me back to the... and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because the movie was made in 92.
Because it's made in 92, yeah.
And it's fine. But it's so funny that even though it's made in 92, I could see this movie being released in cinemas yesterday, except for the score. That's the only thing I think that really dates it.
And that old-timey printing paper with the holes down the side. I was watching Caffey rip that out of the machine going, how did people live like this?
Animals.
Geez, I want a gavel.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Just in general life.
Yeah. The judge was great. Who played the judge?
I don't know the actor's name. He's fantastic,
he was also very
though.
engaging.
Oh, he's good, isn't he?
Yeah, and the guy who played Dawson was actually Rob Reiner's assistant.
Yeah, he was working on the film, I think, as a location scout on this particular project, and they were having a nightmare time casting Dawson. And he was in the room, I think, and Rob Reiner was like, "We need someone like him." Yeah. And then they're like, "Hang on,"
and he was great for a guy who hasn't acted before.
He's good, Dawson doesn't have to do that much.
Well, he's playing a very military... He's very straight-faced. Yeah. He almost has to show no emotion.
Yeah, but for an untrained actor, there's nothing to complain about the performance of Dawson.
Yeah, he was good.
And the other guy, Downey, is played really well, actually.
Probably not as good as Josh Molina could have played him.
Unfair to compare anyone to Josh Molina, though.
Well, and also talking of acting, Sorkin himself makes an appearance in this film.
He does indeed, going blind on paperwork.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I watched... I don't know exactly... So, yeah, film came out in 92. I don't know exactly when I saw it. This film was kind of a staple in my house. My parents... I don't know if either my parents rented it a lot or if it was one of, the 3 VHSs that they actually owned. But this film was on high rotation, and watching it as a kid, it's interesting to kind of think about, because when I first started watching this film, I wouldn't have entirely got it.
Yeah.
I know there were times where in the courtroom they were saying, yeah, I did what this character said, and I would kind of get lost.
Yeah.
As a kid, I didn't know, I'd lost who they were talking about or why it was important that they'd said that to them and not another person. And thinking about it yesterday as I was watching it, I remembered in interviews hearing Sorkin say that he grew up going to the theatre in New York a lot with his parents. And a lot of the time, he wouldn't necessarily know what was going on, but he just liked the sound and the rhythm of dialogue. And upon reflection, I suspect that was a big part of why I loved this film so much, even when a lot of it was going over my head, was that I just loved the sound and the rhythm of this movie.
So how old were you the first time you saw it and really got it, do you think?
Well, if I'm 34 now, I guess 33.
You're a very slow learner.
So Tom Cruise and Demi Moore are married, right? Yeah, I don't know. My recollection is that there was a bunch of times watching this a few times in a row where more things would actually click for me.
Yeah. So you were quite young, though. This
I
was
was
definitely
pretty
your
young.
introduction to Sorkin.
Yeah, like, actually, I must have watched it off TV first because I remember that Jessup never swore when I first saw this film.
Oh, really?
So it must have been taped off the TV initially.
God, those were the days, weren't they? I remember having a copy of Bulletproof that I had taped off the TV. It started at 8:30, so for the first hour, they cut out all the swears, and then from 9:30 onwards, they didn't bother cutting them because after that time, it's free for all. So it's really because the first half is like super clean, and the second half. So that was those were the days of TV. So when because obviously like me, you're a giant film nerd. Was this movie one of the first times you started paying attention to like names behind the scenes? Like when you saw this?
Well, certainly not initially. I remember that, and of course I didn't know that who it was written. You know, when you're that young, you're not really paying that much attention to screenwriters.
Yeah.
So I do recall actually that there came a point where someone in my family realised that A Few Good Men, this staple of my household growing up, was the guy from The West Wing. And someone one day, figured out that, A Few Good Men is by The West Wing guy. And as soon as you know that, like if you can imagine that you didn't know and found that out, you're like, that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah. All right, so let's get down to the rating of this movie then. Given that you've loved it from such a young age, is it hard for you to rate it objectively?
It kind of is. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're on the same boat here, where if we're rating a film out of 10, we will tend to go with whatever's higher of how good is the film or how much do I like the film.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think A Few Good Men is a really good film.
I agree.
But also, my love for the film goes beyond how good it is, if you like.
Yeah.
Like Star Wars, for instance.
Yeah, of course.
So I give this film a 9 out of 10.
Okay. I'm leaning towards an 8. My initial thought was a 7, but I'm between a 7 and 8. I really loved the movie. The dialogue's fantastic. The acting is honestly some of the best acting that you will see in
the
a
fact
film.
that Kiefer Sutherland managed to get even better than he was in Lost Boys with that mullet, amazing.
Yeah, like literally some of the best acting you'll ever see on a screen. So like from that point of view, it's awesome. So I think I'm probably leaning towards an 8.
Okay. Yeah, I had you pegged at probably a 7.
Yeah. So I'm around there.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, no, I liked it a lot. I'll definitely watch it again. This is a very, very, very good movie.
I could actually, I could just listen to, so I've got a road trip later this week. I could just listen to this film.
Like as an audiobook.
Yeah.
Do it.
A friend of mine she was obsessed with Top Gun in high school, and she had it on a cassette.
Yeah.
And she would go around with a Walkman listening to Top Gun.
I used to do very similar stuff. And I remember even when we got a video camera, like a really old black and white video camera, I would actually bootleg my own movies so that I could watch them portably. So I would, because the video camera had batteries.
Yep.
So I would point it at the screen, film a movie, so that on road trips or something, I could sit there with the camera and watch it through the lens.
That's awesome.
Because I just loved movies so much.
That's awesome. But yeah, so many that is so cool. So many of the lines in this, I'm just so happy to listen to. Like when the first time we meet Daniel Caffey, Tom Cruise's character, I love that scene. And he's having the argument with the guy who's trying to charge his client for drug possession when this idiot guy bought a dime bag of oregano. He says, I'm going to charge him with what? Possession of a condiment? It's so good. Oh, I love it.
It was very good. All right. Well, I'm glad that I finally watched it.
I'm glad you can handle the truth.
Now, what are we talking about next week?
I give in.
I'll tell you what we're talking about next week.
Oh, no.
Insidious: The Last Key.
You're inflicting a horror film on me.
Now, my favourite thing about us watching this is that you have never seen the first 3 movies and probably never will.
No.
So you're coming in cold to the 4th movie.
I'm not expecting that's going to matter.
Oh, it's probably
because it's a stupid-ass horror film that's going to be stupid.
I can't wait. I think it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
looking.
get ready for the Bears to disagree next week.
Oh yeah, we will definitely.
Although, who
disagree.
knows?
Oh, maybe you'll love it.
I
maybe
might
you'll turn
love it.
into a horror nut.
Maybe this will join The Shining in the club of horror films I like.
Oh mate.
You know, so far it's only taken Stanley Kubrick to make a horror film to make it good for me.
I can't wait. I can't wait for it.
Looking forward to Insidious, the last of whatever.
Which probably will not be the last of anything. Horror movies franchises just don't end. Oh, they just go on and on and on. So anyway, look forward to that one.
All right.
Well, if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that at bearsonfilmmailbag@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram at Bears on Film Podcast or Twitter at Bears on Film Pod. You can check us out at bearsonfilm.net. Rate us on iTunes, Stitcher. Tell all your friends how fucking amazing we are. We'd love that.
Aren't we amazing?
We're so great.
If we do say so ourselves.
Oh, we're charming. All right, catch us.